The city was silent that night, but silence in the underworld never meant peace. It meant danger. It meant something was moving in the dark. And on that night, the wolves came. They weren't ordinary men. They weren't even ordinary killers. They were a pack, ruthless, coordinated, feared across continents. Wherever they went, blood followed. In the underworld, their name was enough to make assassins lower their eyes and step aside. They hunted in numbers, and once their eyes locked on prey, nothing survived. But this time, they chose the wrong prey. Rumors spread like wildfire through back alleys and smoky bars. The wolves are coming for John Wick. Some laughed, some trembled, and some simply whispered a prayer, because everyone knew chasing a legend was suicide. Inside a dimly lit bar on the edge of the city, an old bartender polished a glass slowly, listening to the whispers. He leaned forward, his voice cracked with years of stories nobody wanted to hear. The wolves don't know what they're walking into. You don't hunt John Wick. You don't even breathe his name unless you're ready to vanish. But the wolves didn't care. They moved like a storm through the city. Armored cars, heavy boots, silent rifles strapped to their backs. Their alpha, a scarred man with eyes cold as winter, growled to his men, "By sunrise, the legend ends. Tonight John Wick falls." The pack howled in unison. Their confidence was unshakable. After all, they weren't hunting an army, just one man. But somewhere in the shadows of that same city, John Wick sat alone in a quiet room. A pistol lay on the table before him. A single bullet rested between his fingers. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't afraid. They were calm, too calm, as though he'd been expecting this night all along. He slid the bullet into the chamber with slow precision, locked the pistol, and set it down gently. Then he did something strange. He lit a single lamp by the window and left the curtain half open. A glow spilled into the street, like a beacon, like an invitation. The wolves mistook it for weakness. They didn't realize it was bait, and as the night deepened, the pack moved closer, their footsteps echoing against the wet pavement, not knowing that with each step forward, they were walking into a story that none of them would survive. The city did not sleep that night. Somewhere in its veins, death was moving, carried on the boots of the wolves. They came in silence, slipping through alleys like shadows. Black coats swayed with the rhythm of their march, rifles gleaming beneath dim street lamps. Their eyes carried hunger, not for food, but for blood, for reputation, for the thrill of ending a name that had become a legend. John Wick. For years, his story had terrified even the coldest assassins. But the wolves were different. They weren't afraid of legends. They were eager to tear one apart. At the front walked their alpha, a man with a jagged scar cutting across his cheek, a mark of battles that had already painted his life in red. His voice was low, commanding, unshakable. By dawn, his story ends. Tonight, the Baba Yaga falls. The wolves answered with a growl, a unison chant that rattled the night air. To them, this was not just a hunt. It was glory. Kill John Wick, and the underworld itself would bow to their name. They moved in formation, 10 across, 10 behind, 30 shadows in total. The sound of boots against wet pavement echoed like a drum of war. Neon signs flickered as they passed, their light bending across cold steel weapons. The streets emptied ahead of them, as though the city itself knew what was coming and wanted no part in it. High above, on a rooftop, a lone figure watched them. An old contact of Wick, a man who once owed him his life. He shook his head and muttered under his breath, "Fools, they think they're the hunters, but they've already stepped into the lion's den." Meanwhile, inside a quiet building at the edge of the dockyard, John Wick moved with silent precision. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was preparing. A pistol here, a knife strapped there, ammunition stacked neatly like chess pieces waiting for their turn. Every motion was calm, deliberate. He poured a drink, took one sip, then placed the glass down untouched. His eyes shifted toward the glow of the lamp he had left burning by the window, his invitation to death. The wolves saw it from afar, a faint light spilling into the street like a signal saying, "I'm here. Come find me, the Alpha smirked. Arrogant till the end, he spat, raising his rifle. But arrogance had never been John Wick's weapon. Precision was. Patience was. As the wolves spread out, circling the building, a strange unease rippled through the younger ones. Something about the open curtain, the waiting light. It didn't feel like weakness. It felt like a trap. The Alpha barked, "Move! Surround him!" And like hounds obeying their master, the wolves advanced. 30 strong, their rifles raised, their breath steaming in the cold night air. Inside, John Wick tightened his gloves. His hand rested on the pistol, steady as stone. His eyes never blinked. The hunt had begun, but not the way the wolves imagined. For in their hunger to claim a legend, they had walked straight into the jaws of their own extinction. The wolves thought they were closing in on their prey, but what they didn't know was that the prey had already drawn the map of their death. The dockyard was silent, except for the faint creak of chains swaying in the night breeze. Containers stood like giants in the dark, their rusted bodies hiding shadows within shadows. It was the perfect place for an ambush. At least, that's what the wolves believed. The Alpha raised his hand, signaling silence. 30 figures spread out, rifles sweeping across the steel jungle. Boots tapped against metal grates, each sound echoing like thunder in the empty yard. "Fan out," the Alpha growled. "Leave nothing unseen." The wolves moved like a machine. One pack, one rhythm, one purpose. Their eyes glowed with the arrogance of predators who had never failed. But arrogance is a weakness, and John Wick thrived on weakness. High above, hidden on a rooftop crane, Wick's eyes scanned their formation. Calm, patient, every breath measured. He had watched them march into his world, and now it was time to remind them whose world this was. A faint click echoed. A single light bulb hanging over a container flickered, then exploded. The wolves froze, guns raised, fingers tight on triggers. But before they could even shout, the first shot came. Crack! A rifleman dropped, his head snapping back. Silence followed, then chaos. Contact! Contact! One of them yelled. Bullets sprayed into the darkness, tearing through metal walls, ricocheting sparks into the night. But Wick was already gone, moving like a shadow, slipping between cover as though the yard itself bent to hide him. Another shot. Another wolf down, the Alpha snarled. He's picking us off. Spread wider! But wider meant weaker. Wider meant exposed. And Wick knew it. From the shadows, he struck again, not with a gun this time, but with a knife sliding silently across a throat. The victim gurgled, collapsing without a sound. Panic began to ripple through the pack. Their training told them to hunt, but their instincts whispered the truth. They were being hunted. A young wolf shouted nervously, "He's everywhere!" "No," the Alpha growled, his voice shaking for the first time. "He's one man, just one man." As if in answer, a chain swung from above, smashing into 2 wolves and sending them crashing to the ground. Wick dropped from the crane like a phantom, landing in the middle of 3 attackers. Gunshot, headshot, pivot, knife to the chest, spin, elbow to the jaw. 3 bodies fell before the others even realized he was there. The wolves fired wildly, but Wick was already rolling into cover. Their bullets tore holes into shadows, but shadows don't bleed. "Men do! Regroup!" "Regroup!" the Alpha screamed. But there was no regrouping. Not anymore. The pack was broken. Fear seeped into their bones, cracking their unity apart. For the first time, the wolves weren't predators. They were prey. Somewhere in the dark, Wick's voice echoed, calm, haunting, merciless. "You came for me. Now I come for you." The words cut deeper than any bullet. The wolves spun in every direction, guns trembling in their hands, but Wick's voice was already gone, swallowed by the night. Then came another shot, and another, each one dropping another wolf. Their numbers were thinning fast. One panicked soldier screamed, firing blindly into the air. His bullets ran dry. He turned and found Wick standing inches away. No words, just steel. The knife slid across his chest, and the scream ended in silence. The Alpha's heart pounded as he watched his men fall one by one. His confidence cracked. For the first time in years, he tasted something he thought he'd forgotten. Fear, and in that moment, he understood. This wasn't a hunt. This wasn't a battle. This was a massacre. The trap had snapped shut, and none of the wolves even realized when. The wolves had entered as predators, but by now, they were running like prey. The dockyard reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Shell casings glittered on the ground like scattered coins of death. Bodies lay twisted in the shadows, their blood soaking into the rain-slicked pavement. The night was no longer silent. It was haunted by the ghosts that hunted them. John Wick. The wolves had come 30 strong. Now less than half remained. Their tight formation was gone, shattered by panic. They huddled in corners, rifles shaking, breath heavy. Every creak of a chain, every drip of rainwater, every flicker of a broken light felt like Wick's shadow reaching for them. Stay together. The Alpha barked, but his voice lacked the same iron. His scarred face twitched, his cold eyes darting from one corner to another. He had led armies before, crushed names out of history. But tonight, he could not see the enemy. He could only feel him. A young wolf, barely 20, clutched his rifle so hard his knuckles whitened. His voice cracked. "He's not a man. He can't be. No one moves like that." The Alpha snapped. "He bleeds like one." Don't you dare forget that. But even he couldn't believe his own words. Because deep down, in the pit of his stomach, he knew this was no ordinary man. They called him Baba Yaga for a reason. A sudden clang rang out, a chain hitting metal. The wolves spun, weapons aimed, hearts pounding. No target, no sound, just emptiness. Then out of nowhere, crack! One wolf dropped, a bullet clean through the skull. Silence followed. Only the sound of his body hitting the ground. The pack froze. Nobody fired back. Nobody moved. Because they knew. The moment they pulled a trigger, Wick would know exactly where they stood. "Keep your eyes open." The Alpha hissed, but eyes open didn't matter. Wick didn't need to be seen to kill. From the shadows, his footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, like death itself was walking among them. Tap, tap, tap. Every step made their hearts beat faster. One wolf broke down, screaming, firing in every direction. Muzzle flashes lit the yard like lightning, bullets sparking against steel. But when the gun clicked empty, the only sound that followed was the soft whisper of a blade. His scream ended before anyone could help. The Alpha cursed under his breath. His men were cracking, breaking apart piece by piece. They had come for glory, but now they were drowning in terror. "This is psychological," he muttered. "He's using fear. Don't let him." But before he could finish, Wick's voice cut through the night. Calm, cold, final. "I don't use fear. I am fear." The wolves froze, their blood turning to ice. The Alpha's hand trembled as he raised his rifle. His own heart betrayed him, pounding loud enough to drown the silence. A soldier whispered, "Alpha, what if this isn't about killing us? What if he's teaching us what we really are?" The Alpha growled, "We're wolves. We don't fear anything." But the truth was carved across every terrified face around him. Wolves had become sheep, and John Wick was the butcher. Another scream echoed from the far side of the yard. Another body fell. Their numbers thinned further. "Pull back!" the Alpha finally commanded. "Regroup by the containers." But even retreat wasn't safe. One by one as they ran, Wick picked them off. Silent shots, quick strikes, shadows moving faster than eyes could track. By the time they reached the containers, only a handful remained. Their rifles hung heavy. Their breaths came ragged. Their eyes darted everywhere, expecting Wick to emerge from the dark at any second. The Alpha leaned against the steel wall, sweat dripping down his scarred face. His pride had vanished, replaced by something he had buried years ago. Something he thought he would never feel again, fear. And for the first time he realized something terrifying. The wolves hadn't come to hunt John Wick. They had walked into his den, and inside a den. The wolves were never the predators. They were prey. The container yard had fallen silent. The gunfire, the screams, the chaos. All of it was gone. Only the wind howled through the rusted metal alleys, carrying with it the stench of smoke and blood. The wolves who once filled the ground now lay scattered, their bodies lifeless reminders of arrogance turned into folly. Only a handful remained, clinging to survival. But survival was a gift Wick rarely gave, and at the center of it all, the Alpha stood. His scarred face was twisted with rage, but his eyes, sharp and wild, betrayed the truth. Fear had taken root. Still, he held his ground, clutching a custom rifle, his breaths heavy, fogging in the cold night air across from him. John Wick emerged from the shadows, calm, silent, his gun lowered at his side, his stance unshaken. He looked less like a man, more like a force of nature. The Alpha snarled, trying to mask the trembling in his voice. "You think this is over, Wick? You may have killed my men, but I am not like them. I am the Alpha, the strongest wolf in the pack." John's gaze was steady, his voice measured. "Then you should have known what happens when wolves hunt a lion." The Alpha's jaw tightened. Rage flared. With a roar, he raised his rifle and unleashed a torrent of bullets. Sparks erupted as slugs ripped through steel and concrete. The night lit up like a storm of fire, but Wick was already moving. He slid behind a container, bullets screaming past his head. The Alpha advanced, every shot a declaration of dominance. But when the magazine clicked empty, the silence that followed was more deafening than the gunfire. A whisper in the dark. "You're loud!" The Alpha spun, but too late. Wick emerged from the shadows, a blur of motion. His pistol barked, forcing the Alpha back, making him stumble. Sparks flew as bullets slammed into the metal walls around him. The Alpha dove for cover, cursing under his breath. "You can't hide forever, Wick," he shouted. But his voice shook. He wasn't commanding anymore. He was pleading. John moved with surgical precision, every step echoing like the heartbeat of inevitability. His calm contrasted the Alpha's desperation. The Alpha tossed aside his rifle, pulling out twin blades strapped to his back. Long curved, wolf-engraved steel. His breath came in growls, his posture low, like a predator ready to strike. "If it's blood you want," he hissed, "then let's end it with steel." Wick holstered his pistol. Slowly, deliberately, he drew his combat knife. The blade gleamed under the pale light, small compared to the Alpha's weapons, but deadly in the hands of a man who never missed. They circled each other. Predator against predator, Alpha against legend. The first clash was thunder. Sparks flew as steel met steel, the sound ringing across the container yard. The Alpha swung with ferocity, each strike fueled by fury. Wick parried with calm precision, his movements efficient. Controlled, the Alpha's blades carved the air, fast and brutal, but every time they seemed to find their mark. Wick was already gone, ducking, twisting, countering with surgical precision. But then one strike slipped through. The Alpha's blade grazed Wick's arm, drawing blood. For the first time, crimson stained the ground beneath him. The Alpha grinned, teeth bared like a beast. "You bleed. You're no ghost. You're just a man." Wick's eyes hardened. He wiped the blood with his thumb, his voice cold as ice. "Yeah, but I'm the man who kills you." The fight exploded into raw brutality. Wick moved like lightning, his knife a serpent striking at weak points. The Alpha countered with wild power, each blow enough to split bone. Their bodies slammed against containers, metal groaning under the impact. The wolves who remained dared to peek from their hiding spots, and what they saw turned their courage into despair. Because the Alpha, their leader, their strongest, was faltering. Every strike he threw, Wick met with precision. Every roar he unleashed was silenced by Wick's calm. The Alpha fought like an animal. Wick fought like inevitability. Finally, Wick disarmed him. One blade clattered to the ground, then the other. The Alpha staggered back, chest heaving, his hands trembling. His scarred face twisted with disbelief. This can't be," he gasped. "I am the Alpha, the predator." Wick stepped closer, knife steady, eyes unblinking. "No, you're just another man who made the mistake of hunting me." In one final, fluid motion, Wick drove the knife across the Alpha's throat. Silence fell. The leader of the wolves dropped to his knees, blood staining the steel ground, his last breath gurgling into nothing. The remaining wolves froze, paralyzed. Their Alpha, their pride, their strength, lay dead at John Wick's feet. Wick looked at them, his face unreadable, his words sharp as the blade still in his hand. "Go, tell the world. The wolves came for John Wick, and never returned. Not a single one dared to stay." They fled into the night, their howls silenced, their arrogance shattered. John Wick stood alone among the dead. His figure, drenched in blood and shadow, was not that of a man who had survived the hunt. It was the figure of the hunter. The legend, the inevitability. The dockyard was quiet now, too quiet. Rain continued to fall, washing blood into dark streams that wound their way across the cold ground. Shell casings glimmered like forgotten coins. Lifeless bodies sprawled where arrogance had led them. The night smelled of gunpowder, iron, and death, and in the center of that graveyard stood John Wick. He wasn't triumphant. He wasn't proud. He simply stood there, chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths, knife still slick with blood. The Alpha's body lay at his feet, eyes wide open, the life already gone. The last of the wolves had scattered into the night, their courage broken, their fangs shattered. They would carry the story with them, not as victors, but as survivors of a nightmare they could never outrun. For John Wick, it was just another night, another hunt, another reminder that peace would never come, not while men like the wolves kept dragging him back into the shadows. He knelt beside a container, pulling out a cloth from his coat. Calmly, methodically, he wiped his knife clean, the same way a soldier cleans his weapon after battle. Not out of pride, but out of ritual, out of habit, out of necessity. Behind him, the city lights flickered faintly, unaware of the storm that had just passed. To the ordinary world, this dockyard was just another forgotten place by the water. But for those who would hear of tonight, it would become sacred ground, a place where the wolves howled and then were silenced forever. Somewhere in the shadows, one of the younger wolves, barely alive, clutched his bleeding arm and watched Wick from a distance. His breath trembled as he whispered to himself, "He's not a man. He's the end of everything. That boy would live." Wick knew it. He had let him crawl away when he could have ended him. And that boy's whispers would travel across the underworld like wildfire, because fear spreads faster than bullets. By dawn, the story would reach bars, safe houses, crime dens, and boardrooms across the city. They would whisper the same words over and over. The wolves came for John Wick. They never returned. And with every retelling, the legend would grow. Some would say he killed 30 men with a single pistol. Others would say he fought the Alpha barehanded and snapped his neck like a twig. Some would even whisper that he never bled, never staggered, never stopped, that he was death itself, walking on 2 legs. The truth didn't matter. In this world, perception was power. And John Wick's shadow had become larger than life. But for Wick, there was no satisfaction in their fear. He didn't fight for stories. He didn't fight for reputation. He fought because the wolves came for him, because violence had a way of finding him no matter how far he ran. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in years. The flame flickered against his weary face, carving sharp lines into the silence. He took a single drag, exhaled into the night sky, and let the rain extinguish the ember. It wasn't celebration. It was survival. Nothing more. He looked at his bloodied hands, the fresh wound on his arm, the knife still warm from the Alpha's throat. His expression never changed, but deep in his eyes there was a weight. The kind of weight only a man who has buried too many nights like this could carry. A voice echoed in his memory. His wife's voice. Gentle, kind, the one thing that used to pull him away from this darkness. "John, you don't have to be who they say you are." But tonight had proven once again that the world didn't care what he wanted to be. The world had already decided who John Wick was. Not a man, not a ghost, a legend. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of sirens began to rise. The police wouldn't come close, not here, not after what they would find. They knew better. By the time they arrived, Wick would already be gone, vanished into the night like a shadow. He holstered his pistol, slid his knife back into its sheath, and turned toward the city lights. Each step echoed against the hollow metal ground. A walk not of triumph but of inevitability. The wolves had come for him. They thought themselves predators, but tonight proved a truth older than blood, older than fear. Predators don't decide the hunt. The hunter does, and as John Wick disappeared into the rain-soaked darkness, the world around him began to whisper once again. His name carried weight heavier than bullets, sharper than steel, stronger than death. John Wick, the Baba Yaga, the man you don't come for. Because if you do, you never return.